Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. We are doing two live streams. We're doing a Zoom and we're doing an Instagram. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Bisorello. I am here. We're going to be talking to the lovely Nicole Moore from Birth into Being. If you don't know what that is, you want to join in because this is going to be so juicy, so good. I just absolutely love this woman. Here she is. I am going to get her in on this call for us right now.
How do we cope with the lag?
Here, do you have a lag?
What I'm going to do, I'm going to put in headphones.
There you go. Put in headphones, and I muted my Zoom. So I'm just hearing the volume from one.
Okay, let's see if we can pull this off. Zoom and Instagram. I've actually never done it.
Me either. So can you turn off one of your volumes on, or like the volume on Zoom? And we'll listen on Instagram.
Will it still record volume?
Oh.
Let's see.
Oh, that's an interesting thing.
And what's also happened is that my earpods, which I just put in to avoid the thing, they've also connected to my computer. Let's turn them off there. No, they haven't. No, they haven't.
We're on echo mode. Are you hearing? I'm hearing your echo. Are you hearing me echo?
Slightly. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we should not do this.
Okay. Do you want to just stick with Instagram for now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Try.
We tried, guys. Thank you guys for just watching us through this technical support error. You know, they do that on lives. I actually worked for live TV before, and things happen all the time. So this is like the real life. And if anybody is trying to do Zoom and Instagram at the same time, and you know better than us, please let us know so we can do them all at once. But anyways, let's get to the goods here. We are here with Nicole Moore from Birth into Being. I can say that I have met this beautiful woman in person. She is what I would consider a dear friend, but also someone who is extremely knowledgeable into this beautiful practice that I actually learned back in 2016, like 9 years ago, with my first birth. And it's all about going back to our own birth experience and how birth affects your life. Okay. Some people are like, I don't think it does. What is birth? What is your own birth? How does it affect who you become? And so Nicole is going to share with us who she is and a little bit about this birth into being, and then we're just gonna have fun from there. So thank you, Nicole, for being here. So excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you, darling. Yeah, we were lucky enough to be neighbours for 2 weeks recently, and I'm really grateful for that beautiful time and the lovely connection that we have begun.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Birth into Being is the brainchild and the baby, creative baby of Elena Tanetti Vladimirova, who is a Russian visionary who began working with birth with Igor Chukovsky, the guy who came up with water birth, and who then went on to become quite a controversial figure, doing yoga with babies and so on. Extreme yoga. Anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole. Elena worked initially with him in the Black Sea birth camps, and from that time made an incredible film called Birth as We Know It. It's really memorable because it has footage of children swimming with dolphins. It has depictions of birth where women, walk into the sea pregnant and emerge with their babies in their arms. It's game-changing footage, and it's a game-changing film. Elena is amazingly articulate and
Mm.
very, she has such an incredible presence, and she's really channeled this concept of how deeply birth affects our lives. And that film was her way of reaching more people than she could reach in person. She then went on to do, public speaking all around the world, sharing this message for 40 years, and workshops, incredible workshops with a really profound modality that has deepened and developed over time into what I'm working with today as the senior facilitator and trainer of others. Um, and this method basically looks at our birth imprints, so how we came into life, whether that's preconception, conception, our time in utero, our actual
Mm.
birth, which is a very pivotal event for our soul's journey and for our nervous systems and for our family unit, all of the things that feed together to then create our postpartum experiences, very foundational about how we can expect the world to be.
Right.
And so we develop accordingly. We develop our neural pathways, and we develop our nervous systems according to the expectations that we have about the world. And that's why this begins even pre-gestation,
Right.
because our parents are kind of living from that paradigm. Then
Mm-hmm.
we are living within it as we develop in utero, and our pathways are developing in direct correlation to what our mother's experience is. How much cortisol is going through her veins? How much oxytocin? Like, is she being loved up? Is she, um, feeling connected with the earth? Is she safe?
Mm.
And yeah, especially right now in the current sort of world mess that we're in, this is a really big question. And it's a question for all of us, whether we are actually in our procreative period or not, because
Mm.
it's about how we support families that are bringing life in. And so, yeah, Elena developed, first of all, the film, then the modality. It's still being used today by myself and many other practitioners around the world who bring to pregnant families, so pregnant couples, um, experiences of birth and early life that do actually help them to create
Mm.
a, a parallel experience for their nervous system that
Mm.
allows them to feel safe, wanted, welcome in the world, and then give that to their babies. So,
Mm.
yeah, it also works across
Awesome.
other life goals, other than just the procreative period. It's about when you're birthing businesses, when you're birthing your art, when you are bringing yourself forward with your gifts to the world. It cuts across. Our imprints influence us no matter what we're
Mm-hmm.
bringing through.
Absolutely.
But it's especially important when we're bringing in life and wanting to really create a safe and deeply nurturing environment for our babies, so that this becomes their blueprint,
Mm-hmm.
their
Mm-hmm.
foundation, the absolute foundation of their being. Because from there, anything is possible.
Yes, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
I love the way you put it. And it's not just, like you said, it's not just about when you're procreating, but it's in your life, your day-to-day life. And they say that people play out their birth story over and over and over again in every aspect that they do. Like, I've heard stories of people have been early or if they've been late, even, like if they were early at their birth, they're early at everything. If they're late, they're always late, because that actually is, like you said, imprinted in their system to actually create that over and over again until that is healed. And a lot of people don't understand that importance of actually going back into that womb time. And what a beautiful practice that you offer to people, and the wisdom of how important it is to do that. Can you share a little bit about, maybe a little bit about your journey and how you got into this? Like, did you like do a workshop? Like how did it come to you to want to jump into this field?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say about the late example. That's
Hmm.
me. That's
Ah,
me. I
okay.
am chronically late. Like I'm late for everything, and I have to work really, really hard to counter that habitual relationship with time. And yeah, it's a thing. No matter how hard I try, it's always a challenge.
Mm,
And um, I have done work around it, but it is so deeply imprinted
right.
that whilst I can change it and I do change it and I can get to things, but it's with work and with attention
Mm,
and with compassion to myself as well, that this is something that I'm actively working around. And it really helps me to understand um, the depth of that habit and that
right.
imprint that,
Right.
you know,
Do you feel it
yeah.
like actually you talk about these imprints. Are you feeling it like in your nervous system? Do you feel it in your body? Like is there like something that goes off? I'm just trying to
Well,
paint a picture for people like what that could look like for
yeah, well,
them.
what's really interesting about that example of time is that there's external proof,
Mm.
like, whereas a lot of the other imprints are related to your feeling state, whereas this is like, there's that thing of like, I'm late again.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
and yeah, I will come back to the other question, but
It's okay.
it's about things like it relates to I believe it relates to my relationship with cortisol as well, because
Mm.
I did have a fair amount of cortisol um, running through my system at the time of my gestation and birth. I was a baby born into a marriage that was already struggling. And
Mm.
so I'm a second child, but a third pregnancy. So my mother had some fear around whether or not my pregnancy would be viable, uh, because she'd had a
Mm.
loss in between my sister and I. And then the relationship was already suffering. So there was that kind of like background anxiety of like, am I going to be a single parent? Which eventually she was.
Mm.
By the time I was 3, they went their separate ways. Uh, but that relationship to cortisol means that I have kind of like a little cortisol addiction going on. Um, just like confessional on Instagram.
I know. I feel
You
like
know,
this is great. This is so good.
my yeah, my cortisol fix for the day. And because I'm obviously trying my best to have a relaxing life, that means that it needs to show up in different ways, and it turns up in relation to time. And so that I can have like my little mini panic attack when I'm rushing um,
Yeah.
to be somewhere, or where I'm fighting against the clock, and I get that rush of cortisol. And so, yeah,
Wow.
it, it's an interesting thing. And yeah, the way that one of the processes that we have in the birth into being method that is directly related to time is a sort of expansion of your relationship to time that follows the Fibonacci sequence. So, like
Hmm.
a little bit, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And, with a lot of breathing and kind of integration techniques that we use to bring the senses of expansion and time expansion into the body, and to kind of make friends with time. Um, yeah. And then the other way is that other processes that don't directly name your relationship with time, but they
Mhm.
expand your capacity for oxytocin and
Aha.
expand your capacity for relaxation and, you know, a more neutral state of being, which is a direct antidote to the stress. But it's a very strong imprint, time. And it seems like such a simplistic explanation in some ways, but it's not. In my experience, it's one of the most complex
Right.
um,
Right.
relationships. And it's also like it's daily. You know, it's not like special occasions. It's not
Yeah.
like when you're, you know, so like we have other processes that work around intimacy and stuff. So it's not like, you know, couple of times a week when you're, you know, expanding into more oxytocin in your lovemaking, or more, you know, surrender and things like this. It's like daily and multiple times a day that you are relating to time. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty fascinating.
I feel like I can relate to that because I was an early bird.
Mm-hmm.
So I always have to be on time. And when I'm not on time, I get, I get a little like, okay. Or when people aren't on time, and I can see, and like you, but the opposite, I can see how that affects my overall system. And I'm like trying to work with that. And I think when we start to understand, like you said, our birth and why we were late, why we were early, and try to counteract that feeling sensation, it'd be really helpful. And I appreciate the way you explained that because I never heard it in that way before with the cortisol and just how that was happening for you and how that relates to your day-to-day life. So appreciate you for sharing that and being so vulnerable too with this audience and sharing your heart and your story. So thank
Well,
you.
you know,
Yeah, I don't
my
even remember what the
partner,
first
I mean, I'm
question
thinking,
was.
yeah, I'm struggling to find it now too. Um,
It's all good. It's all good. I
yeah.
think I think this is a perfect example of how everyone that's just tuning in, or jumping on at this moment, we're talking about our birth and how our birth affects our life and our day-to-day life. And she's just sharing a little bit about the birth into being method and how it goes into these aspects, one which in being time and how you were born, if you were early, if you were late, how that affects. So um
Mm.
want to go
So I think,
into, yeah, go ahead.
I think it was something to do with how birth imprints can affect our birth, or why it's important in pregnancy and birth. Was it something like that?
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um, so it's really, really valuable to explore how you were born and what were the circumstances of your conception and gestation, and you know, your prenatal journey when you are bringing life in, because there is a tendency to recapitulate and to, you know, kind of roll over again and again the same experiences, like what we're talking about with time, where it's not a one and done thing. Like you get to re-experience your imprints, and that re-experiencing of it means that's done. It's like something that shows up again and again in your life. And that is really true when it comes to procreation, because uh, very often when we come through as babies and we are expressing, for example, a stress response, let's say, you know, we were born in a stressful way and we have a whole lot of kind of charge around that, and we're you know, an unsettled baby, and we're trying to release that. But very often we're placated, you know, we're
Right.
jiggled and put to sleep, and our expression is overridden by the
Mm,
very well intentioned care of our care providers, you know, our parents or other people. Um, and obviously, the way that the paradigm of birth is expressed in different countries and different times has a big impact as well. Like Elena talks about how in Russia they used to medicate the babies to keep them
mm,
settled after
mm.
birth.
Mm.
Sometimes when a woman has had a lot of medications during the labor, this also influences the baby, and they come out a little numb. They
Yeah.
come out, a little less than their actual capacity to express. So, and then before you know it, they're being breastfed to sleep or fed, like powders and
Right.
formula milk that is so heavy on the protein that it's like a drug, for
Right.
little
Right.
babies, that they just get so full and
Right.
food
Yeah.
coma, you know.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. And
and
that
and
seems like
like
a
their
normal.
body,
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that, their body checks out, or, there's parts of them that check out, because their body is so deeply dealing with their digestion, like their brand new digestive system that's all of a sudden trying to digest formula milk. uh, their emotional processing and their capacity to express and release whatever nervous system charge they have from their birth, they just don't get to, and then before you
Yeah.
know it,
Yeah. Well, and
they're
how
a baby, and they've lost touch with it,
totally. And how does that relate to, later in life? Like if they didn't get to have that voice or they were getting numbed, whether it's like you said with the medication at birth, the kids were medicated or their mom was medicated. How do you see that translate into a teen, into an adult? How are they with life? Are they finding something to get medicated to get numbed out? Or do you think they're always trying to express themselves?
uh, First I just want to say that,
Yeah.
follow that thread of what I was saying about how it shows up again in labor. So a woman who experienced that in her early life
Yeah.
might then have a predisposition to want to numb out, for her own birth, because the intensity is just beyond her capacity.
Right.
Uh, the pattern itself also, like if we think of it, it's a bit cosmic, but if we think of it as an entity of its own as well, that it's still kind of playing itself out. So that's in relation to birth, and there's other examples of
Mm-hmm.
how the birth pattern or imprint
Mm-hmm.
self perpetuates.
Right.
But definitely, like for babies that have experienced a lot of drugs in their very earliest moments of life,
Mm-hmm.
either during the gestation, if the mother was taking painkillers and things, or even things that she might have been taking recreationally,
Right.
that interfere with the flow of natural hormones and natural endorphins.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the birth itself, or immediate post birth period, yes, there can definitely be a predisposition to choosing numbness.
Right. Right.
And when that capacity for expression is kind of,
Mm.
you know, curtailed early in life, um, yeah, people give up.
Right. Right.
People give
Right.
up. And it's not just in birth, it's also culturally, right? So again, this placating of babies and feeding them every time they make a sound, it's, um, it doesn't foster the release that
Mm.
babies are often seeking. And for that, I
Mm.
absolutely love all of the concepts of aware parenting. And there's a beautiful woman here in Australia called Marion Badenoch Rose, who
Mm.
is the aware parenting facilitator and teacher here in Australia. She's amazing. She's on Instagram. She um, definitely has a really thorough and incredibly gentle approach to the concepts of allowing your baby to release their stress
Mm.
through crying. And it's obviously it's nuanced, it's subtle, and there's a lot to it. So, we won't go down that rabbit hole. But there are ways to help your baby to communicate, to have the freedom to communicate. But it involves, again, looking at your own journey and like, why is it so triggering for us
Right.
when a baby cries? You know, part of it is our innate, you know, the innate communication systems where, you know, we are hardwired to respond.
Right.
And then there's the triggering, the discomfort with, you know, when we have consciously decided to give them space for expression.
Right.
It's a lot easier said than done, you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
because of our own nervous systems and our own lack of experience in being listened to.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know,
I love that
yeah.
you're saying that being listened to and have them being heard, and how that does begin at such an early time in life. Many of you probably seen the video I posted a week ago about the lotus birth that I did with my son, and people not understanding, like, your kid doesn't know the difference. What are they talking about? He doesn't know what that
Mm,
placenta is. He's just holding it. That's just because he's just like that. And we really made that conscious decision in that birth to be undisturbed and to
mm,
allow him to have that process. And I could see the difference. And you probably can see this too because you actually met my son Francis. How, because I really feel it's because of that imprint, because he was able to express himself and he was able to go through that process, that mourning process, until he was ready. He's so self-expressive now. Like, he's not afraid to tell you how he feels, and we don't shut him down. I always tell my kids, you can cry, let it out. Let out your feelings. Don't be afraid. Like, if you stuff them down, then you're just numbing it. And I thought it was interesting when you were talking about, they feed them to sleep, right? When they want to
mm,
cry. Like,
mm,
it could translate to so many things that you think about when you're older, you got fed a bottle, and then when you're older, when you can't express your feelings, you take the bottle again. You take the bottle again. You're taking that bottle of beer again. Could be many different things, and people don't realize that is very corresponding. Smoking. I know. I was sitting there going, "Is she about to smoke?"
no, we just love to do things with our mouths. You know, we love to soothe our nervous system with our mouths.
Mm-hmm.
That's no, it's been 100 years since I had a cigarette. Um, yeah, but you know, that's where this habit, why it's so incredibly addictive. You know, whether it's a cigarette or a bottle,
Wow.
our
Gum.
fingers.
Yeah.
We love to eat our fingers, you know, and yeah, all
Yeah.
these things that we do that are like, you know, kind of like control patterns of soothing ourselves with our mouths. Um,
Right. And is that
and
like
numbing, you know, like numbing the feeling, like when there's a lot going on, and you know, just give me a ciggy, you know, like, or this is why when people reach for the soothing and the, you know, it's because when the feelings of intensity are too strong. It's fascinating stuff, and look, none of it is um a straight line. And like, yeah, some of the people that were on your previous video probably have a, you know, a field day with some of these concepts because they are nebulous and because they are in the feeling zones. um and it's not you know, empirical knowledge, it's anecdotal. But there are mothers all over the world who know that, you know, a baby who has gone through a period of expression and been supportive of that will, ironically, sleep like a baby, you know, when they have had their time of expression and been nurtured through that and into the next phase. And again, like, I really urge people, if they're interested in these concepts, to really dive deep into the aware parenting perspective, because there's a lot to it.
Right.
And it is definitely not about like it's not about control crying. It's not about leaving your baby unattended while they cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Like
it's about,
self-soothing. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's absolutely a completely different concept. And yes, your video, I didn't watch I did intend to go back to it, but I didn't get there to watch the whole thing. But I saw the way that, and I know you, the beautiful way that you acknowledge your children's feelings. And
Mm.
I got the gist from the video, of what you were doing. You know, you were listening to Francis's, um, and acknowledging and validating his relationship that was being expressed through him holding on to his umbilical cord.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I love Lotus Birth as a practice. I did it with my two children.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and it resonated so deeply with me when so I have two children who are now young adults, and my son was the firstborn, and when he let go of his placenta and his umbilical cord separated at 5 days, he had a big release. That's how we knew what was going on, was because he became really unsettled and was having a big release of
Mm.
emotion. And so we kind of checked, is everything okay? You know, he was also my firstborn, so of course you check, you know, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Um, and then when I saw what had happened, I had a big release as well, which
Mm.
showed me why I was so drawn to the practice.
Mm.
And I did ask my mother about my own placenta and my own journey with that, but I was born in 1974, and she was so I was a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after cesarean, and
Mm.
she had to, you know, it was quite radical for her to oppose the doctor
Oh. Oh.
and cesarean. Yeah, sorry, I started to play with my little things, and then
It's okay.
they started communicating. Um, I only use these for emergencies. I hate them. So,
Mm.
uh, yeah, so I didn't really get that information from my mother about what was my relationship with my placenta like, what was my
Mm.
separation. And I can only assume that, and I was hospital born, so I can only assume that my placenta would have been cut straight
Right.
away and taken away, and, you know, no further comment. um, so it was really big for me when my son's placenta came off, and it was, you know, um, it was one of those scenarios where, yeah, it's the end of the birth and it's the final step in my baby becoming completely, um, you know, physically separated from me and from the birth experience. Um, and of course, I was, you know, freshly past postpartum, so there's more
Mm.
emotions and hormones moving through my system. But my response was bigger than all of that. My sadness was so deep, and that is a sure sign that there's imprints at play. When we
Mm.
have a bigger response than what the external circumstances kind of
Mm.
point to, it's a sign that, you know, like there's more going on there. There's some
Right.
very deep, subliminal layers of experience that are
Right.
wanting to be experienced again. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I'm so fortunate that I had a beautiful birth with him, and my postpartum period was thoroughly supported. So, you
Mm.
know, I just curled up with my baby and had my cry while he was having his, and then we probably drifted off to sleep and slept like babies, you know.
Yes.
But
Oh, that is so
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
So
And I
beautiful.
did do the practice of lotus birth again with my daughter a couple of years later. Um, but we didn't wait. So she had the placenta and the cord still attached for about 24 hours. We didn't wait for it to fully release because we live in rural Australia and we had a large lizard lurking around our teepee. So, we had our teepee as a birth space, and, teepees don't go all the way to the ground. They, so
Right.
I, and by that time I'm a mother of two. I've got a 2-year-old
Right.
bouncing around, and I was like, nah, I'm not
Yeah.
leaving the baby with the placenta attached, because I have to look away. And there's
Yeah.
this
That's a very
wild reptile hanging around our space, the placenta's got to go. So,
wow.
so it was also very beautiful too, because I must say that in the birth journey with my firstborn, it was a very big process for me, as any pregnancy and birth is. But the second time, it was really important for our family unit that my partner had a little bit more input, and
Mm,
he was feeling really agitated about the placenta and the goanna and the safety of
mm,
the situation.
mm.
So, because goannas in Australia are big. It's like a big iguana kind of
Okay.
animal. They are meat eaters, and they do kill chickens regularly,
Wow.
and they do horrible things like behead the chickens and then leave it out in the sun to come back for it later. Like, I mean, it's just lizard behavior,
Right.
but like
Right.
they're not mammals. They don't care. They don't care. They're fully reptilian nature. So yeah, so my partner was feeling anxious about that, and he was very much in protective mode, and it was in the family journey of having had a very, very strong holding of everything for my son. It was important that things loosen up and that my partner have that input and have his needs for safety really acknowledged and met. And
Mhm.
yeah, and my daughters, of course, as well. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was just a different situation, where, everybody that's had more than one child understands, I'm sure. Once
Right.
you've got a
Right.
toddler, your attention is very different. So,
Totally, totally. And it's interesting you say that because a lot of people were asking those questions like, it should be cut off right away. That is unsafe. And a lot of people are saying, well, there's no prey. There's nobody going to come and eat the placenta. But in your case, that is actually truth. And it made sense. But you knew as a conscious mom that I've got to cut this off because I've got a lizard that might come after the placenta and my baby. And I think that was like the smartest thing you could have done. And having your husband there putting his input and having him go through that process is so beautiful. It's
yeah,
it's it's really, you're conscious and you're aware. And I think that, for any of those who are listening and had that question, those are valid things to think of, especially if you're living in a situation like she's in. So, and there's somebody who asked a question, and I don't know if you're open to ask or answering a question
of
here, but
course.
Brooke asked us, how can we be more connected to those subtle subconscious moments where we might choose food to soothe us and our emotions when we just feel the feeling? And how can we stop ourselves in that moment? Awesome question, Brooke. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Slow down. Slow down is my response to that. Slow down, take some deep breaths, feel into it. Like, are you actually hungry? When was the
Mm,
last time you ate? What did you eat? You might have eaten, but maybe it was a light salad and you're craving some protein, you know.
mm,
Um, so there's all those practical things. And then when you slow down, you can also get more in touch with your feelings and using the breath. Like, the breath is just the most
mm,
amazing tool for really identifying like what's going on with the body, because you might be perceiving it as hunger when it's actually, um, some other kind of low level anxiety or anticipation, or, there's other feelings that are wanting to be heard. Um, Yeah. And if you know that you have a pattern of self-soothing through food, then yeah, like just slow everything right down and look at it and see if there's
Mm.
another way that you can meet that need. See if you can even identify the need that is presenting as hunger that might be something else. I love, and I have them up at all of my workshops, the nonviolent communication lists of feelings and needs,
Mm.
because our language, you know, in the kind of in the Western world has really mixed up feelings with the behaviors of others, and you know, like I'm feeling abandoned. Well, that's not a sensed feeling. That's a concept that somebody's abandoned you. So not
Mm.
nonviolent communication is another like amazing thing, like totally in my toolbox of life and also
Right.
of working with people and parenting, like absolutely. And when we, for example, when we're listening to our children and coming back to you and that video, uh, when you were talking with Francis and saying, "Oh, you want to say goodbye to your placenta," or I can't remember the words you were
To your
saying, but
buddy.
yeah, to your buddy, you know, you were acknowledging. And the thing is, like, you might not, when you are making feeling guesses like that, you might not get it entirely right. But whatever it is that you're doing, you're acknowledging that there's feelings there. You know, you're not forcing them. If the child then said, like, let's say the child is older and they say, "No, I'm not sad, I'm angry." Although usually there's a bunch of feelings underneath anger, but you know, like it's just a guess, and it's like it's a fluid thing. It doesn't, you know, um, but yeah, like we often confuse feelings, like just in the dominant paradigm way of communicating and talking, we often confuse our feelings with the actions of another. And when we use the nonviolent communications lists of feelings and needs, we are able to develop a relationship with our own feelings where we can like actually sense, like, what am I feeling? Ah,
Right.
it's it's anxiety, it's loneliness. Ah, what's the need? Ah, it's
Mm.
connection. I need connection in this moment. You know, like it's a
Yeah.
language, and it's not just a language of how you talk to others, it's a language of how you talk to yourself. And um yeah, that's why parenting is just such a rich journey, isn't it? Because you learn these things to be able to relate to and support your children, and then at the same time you learn all these tools for yourself of like how to relate and support yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where understanding limbic imprinting is also really amazing, is because a lot of people do come to it through their desire to bring their baby into a clear field. You know, they want to deal with their own emotional baggage and their behavioral patterns that they don't enjoy. They want to work on their relationship or whatever before bringing the baby in, either before conception or before birth. And then they learn these incredible life skills and have insights about themselves. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like that
Yeah.
phrase, you know, that is so well known and spoken about, that our children are our greatest teachers. It's like bang on, you know, like
Yes.
what they bring to us is just so rich.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. In every way too, I feel like every single day there's something. There's something every day. And I remember my dad telling me, he's like, and it never ends. Even when you have 40 and 50-year-old kids, there's still something from your child every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, my children are now 23 and almost 21, and it
Wow.
absolutely does not stop.
Wow. Wow.
even when they're not, so my 23-year-old, my firstborn, my son is currently living away. And even that is like so rich, relating to him in new ways. It's
Mm-hmm.
incredible. He
It is.
sends me pictures of his, the food that he's making for himself. And it's very cute.
That is really cute.
Like I'm sure he doesn't send me pictures. Well, he doesn't send me pictures if he buys, a hamburger somewhere. But when he makes himself a beautiful meal, he sends it to me like with pride. Like, look, mum,
Oh,
look at
that's
this
so cute.
salad I made, mum. Like, yeah, vegetables.
Yay, my mom's approving me.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Really
Oh my gosh.
gorgeous.
That's
Yeah.
really beautiful. You
Mm.
know, here is the first question. I know we only have like a little bit of time. I feel like literally we could talk for hours about this because it's so deep. I want you to share a little bit about why you actually got into this, and then yeah, like what made you decide to get into the birth into being
That was
and help
that was the
people.
first question, was how did you come across it? Was it a workshop or whatever?
Yes,
Yeah, we remembered.
I
Um,
remember.
so I had these beautiful births. I was very well supported. I was living on community. I was living on the land. I had a really like low or no tox lifestyle. Um, and it just made complete sense that I would bring my babies in as naturally as possible. Uh, and I was so well supported. Like I was such a blessing to be surrounded by women who shared so generously their stories, and I had an amazing midwife and amazing support around her as well, like women that were training with her,
Mm-hmm.
um, who I'm still friends with today, and blessings upon blessings. And I had already made some films prior to becoming a mum, and then after having my babies and having these experiences, I was like, this is just wildly, like, it's just, birth is just so um, cataclysmic, really, in your life. Like it changes everything. And uh, I felt such a sense of responsibility to share that, because here in Australia, that, and as it is around the world, there's a shift towards more medicalized birth. And I just felt like people are just missing out. They need to know about this stuff. And this is in my immediate postpartum, like just oxytocin flooding my body, and yeah, I've got to share this.
Yeah.
And then of course, number two came along, and that slowed me down a little bit. But I picked it up again, when she was a little bit older. I made a film about raising your kids without nappies to start with. And
Mm.
then I was like, okay, now birth. I really want to make a film about birth that explains why physiological birth is still important. Not just for the mother, not just for the baby, but for society at large. I was really like um, aware. I'm a big picture thinker, so I was really aware of the ongoing implications. Then I watched Birth as We Know It. So that was my daughter was born in 2005. Birth as We Know It was released in 2006. That's Elena's
Mm.
film that I was talking about at the beginning. Which, by the way, if anybody wants to watch the free 25-minute download, you can get that on birthintobeing.com. I'm just slipping that in there because it's an amazing film and everybody
Yes.
should see it. It's quite old now, but it's still well worth watching. Everything is relevant. uh, Still relevant. And so I watched that film, and then I was like, oh, I don't need to make my film anymore that I was gestating, because it's all been said. Elena is, like I said before, very articulate, and it has an incredible way of using
Mhm.
storytelling and everything to explain why physiological birth is so important to our species. So, as well as the steps to how to bring that in for yourself, even if you don't have the internal reference points. And that's the work of the imprinting, is how to give yourself the internal reference points. Anyway, I fell in love a little bit, with Elena, of course, like everybody does. She's amazing. She has an incredible presence. And so and I was showing that film to all my friends, like I remember inviting all the women on my community over to my house, like, we've got to watch this film. Let's have dinner and watch the movie. And then lo and behold, an invite came through the email. I remember I was up one night very late, far too late for a mum with kids, and I got this email which was a request that Elena is coming to Australia and she would like to have at least 5 events. And I was like, that's it. So I got together with a couple of beautiful friends, Avalon and Mika, and we invited Elena to come to our area, which was a country area. We did a screening of the film, and then I hosted her for a 3-day workshop on my community. And basically, I've been in cahoots ever since. Wow. More slowly in the beginning, because I had young children, but then we came up with, I made a training DVD with her, which is like, we had hours upon hours of footage. I traveled around with her doing workshops. We went to LA. We did a few film festivals together. We had some really amazing experiences, and we turned all of that into a training DVD that I still use today in trainings, so that people can really go into the experience on an emotional level and have something for their cortex to take away, because they will forget.
Right.
The work is so transformative that people don't really remember a lot of what happened, and that's fine when they're just imbibing the experience and infusing themselves with new imprints, and that's fine. But if they want to do the work, then they need to understand intellectually what's going on. They need to be able to like step back from it and hold the space. So that's why my trainings are incredibly long. We do an 8-day deep immersion workshop and then an 8-day training, and then people also can buy the training document. Beautiful. I won't call it DVD anymore. It's now on a USB. But it was a DVD when we started, and yeah, it helps them to be able to come back with their intellectual mind and understand things from a more rational and observant place.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And is that, sorry, keep going.
I just, why I do the workshops is because the value of helping people overcome what feel like lifelong obstacles is really clear to me, because then it means that they can become open channels for the things our world needs, and whether that's earth connection and taking responsibility for the damage that we as a species have done and doing something about it, whether it's related to being a birth worker and supporting the paradigm of physiological birth, whether it's parenting, just moving on from your own early wounds to be able to hold your children with the love and care that they need and deserve, and that our planet needs and deserves. And as the world gets more and more nuts, my world, we can't even go there, but it just feels like my work is imperative, and I literally I'm on fire with it. Now that my children are grown up, I'm ready. I mean, we met in Kauai. I came to present at the festival there that unfortunately didn't end up happening, but we did have a beautiful workshop.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm on fire with it. I'm very happy to be invited places. I'm very happy to lean into different applications of this work. And it's been 16 years
Wow.
since I did my first training with Elena, and yeah,
And are
I'm
you
taking care of the business side of things. I'm taking care of most of the communications. Elena is mostly retired. She does a few interviews here and there. She keeps getting roped into doing workshops, but she's now only doing them in her hometown of Oregon. And yeah, and there's facilitators who are, at various stages of their development all around the world, and also various applications. So some of them are
mm,
birth workers, some of them are business people and entrepreneurs, and some of them are working with intimacy, some of them are
mm,
working with like actually corporate stuff, which is fascinating. Um, yeah,
mm.
there's men
Yeah.
bringing this into men's circles,
Beautiful.
artists working with
Beautiful.
creativity and unleashing
Beautiful.
creativity. It's like imprints impact everything. And so the
Mhm.
practitioners that are up and coming are leaning into all these different areas, and it's just beautiful. And I'm so happy and proud to be carrying Elena's flame while she goes
Mm.
dancing.
Mm. And you get to train all these beautiful people into this practice and to be able to have it spread like wildfire, which is exactly like you said, it's needed right now. And whether it's the state of the world or just where people are at in general, they need this work. And so how can the people that are watching this, how can they find you? What's the best website? What's your email? How can they get in touch with you?
birthintobeing.com is the
Okay.
website. It is transitioning. I've been saying that for years because it's like the least important thing that I do. It's the least important and the most important, but I am refreshing the website. But it's still up and active while that's all
Beautiful.
happening behind the scenes. So birthintobeing.com, obviously here on Instagram, same on Facebook. I
Great.
try to limit myself to those few channels.
Cool.
Um,
Beautiful.
there's a bit
Beautiful.
of stuff on YouTube as well.
Great.
Longer format interviews with Elena and myself on YouTube, where various rabbit holes are explored.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing. Well, thank you so
yeah.
much for coming on here today. Thank you
Mm.
so much for bringing your spirit and this beautiful gift. I know myself, it was extremely transformative. My husband's experienced it and felt it was very transformative. And I'm so excited that people like you are able to bring this out into the world so people can understand just how important our birth really is. And everyone, please head to birthintobeing.com. You can go to our
Mm.
Instagram and yeah, find out where those trainings are and get more facilitators, get more people getting interested and really want to not just do this, but bring it to their book, right? So like if they're doing other healings, they can also add this to it. And it's just going to be an extra bonus for you and for the people that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, there is so much work to be done, and the inner wounds that stop us, that keep us disempowered or small in our whatever our
Yeah.
chosen area of influence is, it's like, we have to move on. We got to move fast these days. Because not just the political situation, but uh, the way things are going environmentally. Like, we have to be strong to bring in the changes that we need to flourish and survive. So, yeah, that's my mission. It's
Yes.
so beautiful to talk to you, darling. And
Yes.
yeah, I also very deeply admire your courage in being able to speak your truth on a
Mhm.
platform like this, where there are a lot of people who don't understand it yet. Um, but I do find that whenever there is that confusion that's created when you're sharing something that's
Mm.
new to people, uh, this shows that you're on the right track because you're communicating to the right people, those that do not yet know. how important birth is, or that you can speak so lovingly to a baby,
Mm,
that you can, operate from a paradigm of love. Like, this is gold. This is the gold that our well needs. So,
mm,
well
mm,
done to you.
mm.
Burn on.
Yes. Thank you. Bring the love on, the
Mm,
fiery burn from our
mm,
hearts. That's how I feel too, is, we just have to share our hearts and share our experiences and just be who you truly are. And when you do that, then that's when it really triggers or opens that up for other people to find that within themselves, and what sparks that flame, right? To keep
mm.
them going. So we can all walk with our flames together.
Yeah.
Yay. Beautiful guys. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for showing your just heart of gold and your flame today. And yeah, we'll be in touch very soon.
Yeah. And let's have a dedicated conversation about elimination communication sometime.
Yes, that let's do that
Because,
one next.
yeah,
Elimination communication.
yeah,
Okay.
that's, yeah. Lots of
We
love.
need it. Okay.
Ah,
Ciao.
bye.